Poor girl points to a billionaire CEO and asks, "Mummy, isn't that my daddy?" The mother is shocked to see her husband alive, holding hands with another child at school. The school courtyard was filled with excitement. Colorful balloons danced in the air, tied into improvised arches. Children ran back and forth, their laughter mixing with the music blaring from the speakers. It was the end of semester celebration, a moment Rachel always looked forward to so she could see Lily's progress. Rachel straightened her daughter's yellow dress while surveying the surroundings. The day was perfect, not too hot, not too cold, just a light breeze that ruffled Lily's brown hair, so much like her own. "You look beautiful today," Rachel said, holding Lily's small hands in hers. "Thanks, Mum." Lily smiled, revealing the gap where one of her baby teeth had recently fallen out. "My teacher said we can eat all the cake we want. Just don't overdo it, or you'll get a stomachache." Lily nodded, though the mischievous glint in her eyes suggested she had her own plans for that mountain of sweets on the snack table. The principal began her speech, talking about achievements and growth. Rachel listened attentively, while Lily, restless as ever, swung her legs back and forth in her chair. At 8 years old, her capacity to focus on grown-up speeches was still quite limited. "Mom, can I go play with Zoe? She's calling me." Lily pointed to a girl with braided pigtails waving from the other side of the courtyard. "Sure, but stay where I can see you." Rachel followed her daughter with her eyes as she ran, bouncing among the other parents. She loved Lily's energy, always full of life, always curious. Raising her alone hadn't been easy, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. The speech ended, followed by applause and the release of the children to the activities planned by the teachers. Rachel took the opportunity to grab a coffee from the drinks table. She chatted with some parents she knew from school meetings, exchanging the usual stories about their children's development. "Lily's becoming more independent every day," she remarked to Jenny, one of the moms in the class. "Sometimes it feels like she's grown up overnight." "They grow too fast," Jenny agreed. "Enjoy it while she's still little." Rachel nodded, sipping her coffee. Her eyes never stopped scanning the courtyard for Lily. It was a habit of a single mum, that constant vigilance, always on alert. About half an hour later, Rachel looked for Lily among the children. She wasn't with Zoe, as expected. A slight pang of worry, that maternal concern that never rests, made her scan the crowd more carefully. She found Lily standing near the gate leading to the parking lot, as though something there had captivated her. Rachel walked over to her. "Lily, is everything okay?" As she got closer, Rachel realized her daughter was staring fixedly at a man entering the courtyard. He was holding the hand of a little girl, likely around 6. The child wore a light blue dress and had a delicate bow in her hair. Even from a distance, Rachel noticed something familiar about that girl. She looked like a younger version of Lily. Then her eyes traveled up to the man. The world stopped. That profile, that slight tilt to the left when he walked. The way he smiled at the little girl, revealing the dimple Rachel knew so well. Ethan. It couldn't be. Ethan was dead. That's what she had believed for nearly 9 years. That's what his parents had told her. That's what time had relentlessly confirmed with its silence. But there he was, alive, holding the hand of a child who wasn't Lily. The shock paralyzed her. The coffee in her hand forgotten. Her heart seemed to have stopped beating, only to start again with a force that sent waves of dizziness throughout her body. "Lily, let's go back inside," she managed to say, trying to discreetly pull her daughter away, but it was too late. Lily, with that sharp, childlike perception, and the memory fueled by old photos hidden in a box under Rachel's bed, had already made the connection. Lily's small hand rose, pointing to the man who was now helping the little girl in the blue dress climb onto one of the inflatable attractions. "Mom," she said, her childish voice tinged with innocent curiosity that cut through Rachel like a knife. "Isn't that my daddy?" Time froze at that instant. Lily's words echoed in Rachel's ears as though they had been shouted through a megaphone. Around them, the celebration continued, parents chatting, children playing, music playing. But to Rachel, it all dissolved into a distant blur. Her fingers instinctively squeezed Lily's hand, perhaps too hard, because the girl made a small grimace. "Mom, you're hurting me." "Sorry." Rachel loosened her grip but didn't let go. She couldn't let go. She felt as if Lily might vanish if she did. Her mind was racing, trying to process the impossible. Ethan alive. Ethan with another daughter. Ethan moving on with his life as if Rachel and Lily had never existed. A wave of nausea hit her. The bitter taste in her mouth wasn't just the suddenly unpalatable coffee. "That is him, right?" Lily insisted, her big eyes fixed on her mother's pale face. "He looks just like the picture you keep in the drawer." Rachel swallowed hard. How could she explain to a child something she herself couldn't comprehend? How could she tell Lily that the father she'd never met, the man Rachel believed had been taken from them by death, was alive and had built a new family? A few feet away, unaware of the earthquake he had just caused, Ethan crouched to fix something on the other little girl's shoe. He smiled, that same smile that had haunted Rachel's dreams for years. "Let's go," Rachel managed to say, tugging Lily toward the back exit. "But Mom, that's him. Why can't we talk to him?" Rachel felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. Each fragment carried years of grief, anger, and now a betrayal she didn't even know how to name. "Not now, Lily. Please." Lily resisted a bit more, wanting to go back, her eyes glued to the father she'd never known. "But Mom, he doesn't look like he saw us. What if he doesn't know we're here?" Lily's innocent words were like salt on an open wound. Rachel bit her lip to hold back tears threatening to spill. She couldn't break down now, not in front of Lily, not in public. "We'll talk about this at home," she promised, her voice trembling slightly. "This isn't the right time." Lily frowned, clearly unhappy with the answer. But something in her mother's face, perhaps the pallor or the damp shine in her eyes, made her yield. "Okay," she agreed, still looking back as Rachel led her out of the courtyard. As they left, Rachel couldn't resist glancing back one last time. Ethan was now facing away, crouched next to the little girl, adjusting the bow in her hair with a care Rachel recognized immediately. It was the same gentle way he used to handle fragile, precious things, the way he'd once treated Rachel, before everything changed, before the supposed death, before the lies that she now realized had stolen 9 years of their lives. The car was hot when they got in, the afternoon sun having turned the interior into an oven. Rachel turned on the air conditioning with shaky hands and took several deep breaths before starting the engine. "Mom?" Lily's voice was soft now, almost a whisper. "Are you crying?" Rachel hadn't realized she was silently crying. She wiped the tears away quickly with the back of her hand. "I'm just surprised, honey. It's been a long time since I saw your dad." As she drove in silence, her world upside down, one question burned in her mind. Why? The ride home felt like the longest trip Rachel had ever taken. Though she kept her eyes on the road, her mind was miles away, replaying the moment she saw Ethan, alive, breathing, existing in a world she believed he had left. "Mom!" Lily's voice broke the heavy silence inside the car. "Why are we leaving so early? The party wasn't over." Rachel swallowed before replying. "I'm not feeling well, sweetie. It's because of Dad, isn't it?" The innocent question landed on Rachel like a weight. How could an 8-year-old be so perceptive? She only nodded, unable to give a more detailed answer, without her voice betraying the storm of emotions inside her. When they finally arrived at their small apartment, Rachel moved like an automaton. She locked the door, hung the keys on the hook by the entrance, took off her shoes. Automatic gestures, part of a familiar routine that now felt like it belonged to another life. "Go take a shower, Lily. Then we can order pizza for dinner." Pizza on a Friday. Lily's eyes lit up. Pizza was usually reserved for special occasions. "Can I choose the toppings?" "Of course." Listening to the sound of the shower running in the bathroom, Rachel allowed herself to collapse on the living room couch. She covered her face with her hands, stifling a sob that threatened to escape. She couldn't cry now. Not when Lily could come in at any moment with 1,000 questions she couldn't answer. She stood up and went to her bedroom. At the back of the closet, hidden among old shoeboxes, was a simple wooden box. Rachel took it out gently, as though handling something extremely fragile and precious. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the box. The scent of old paper and stored memories drifted up to meet her. Inside, carefully organized, were the pieces of a life she believed had been lost forever. The first photo showed her and Ethan as teenagers at their high school prom. She wore a simple blue dress. He wore a rental tux that was slightly too big. Both smiled as if the world belonged to them. Rachel let her fingers trace Ethan's face in the photograph. So young, so full of promise, so free from the complications adulthood would bring. The second photo had been taken at the beach during the summer after graduation. They had built an elaborate sandcastle with towers and a moat. Ethan insisted on placing a small flag on top, made from a popsicle stick and a scrap of fabric. "One day we'll have our own home," he had said. "Not as big as this castle, but it'll be all ours." Rachel's smile in the photo was radiant, her eyes focused not on the castle but on Ethan. Even then, he was her whole world. The next photo made her heart clench. She was pregnant, her belly huge under a floral dress. She was in the final trimester, looking tired but happy. Ethan stood behind her, his hands tenderly on her belly, his chin resting on her shoulder. The pride in his eyes was unmistakable. They had been so happy then. Even with all the challenges, she was still in college. He worked 2 jobs to pay the bills, both facing his parents' disapproval. They were together, building a family. The last photo was the most painful. Ethan holding a newborn Lily in the hospital. The expression of absolute love on his face as he gazed at his daughter for the first time. It was the last photo they took together. The memory of that night flooded back with full force, as if it had happened yesterday and not almost 9 years ago. "I have to go, my love. My dad's waiting." Ethan kissed Rachel softly on the lips while Lily, only 3 months old, slept in the bassinet nearby. "Do you really have to? It's raining so hard." Rachel squeezed his hand, a strange sense of foreboding gnawing at her. "It's just a quick meeting with some of his associates. I'll be back before midnight." Ethan smiled that smile that always melted her heart. "Get some rest. You look exhausted." "Taking care of a newborn isn't exactly relaxing," she teased, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling growing in her chest. "You're amazing." He kissed her again. "I love you. I'll be back soon." Those were the last words she heard from him. The rain turned into a storm. By midnight, Ethan still wasn't back. Rachel called several times, but it went straight to voicemail. At 2 in the morning, when Lily woke up crying to be fed, the doorbell rang. In the hallway, drenched from the rain, stood Ethan's parents. His mother's face was streaked with tears. His father, always stern and controlled, looked like he'd aged 10 years since Rachel last saw him. "There was an accident," Ethan's mother said, her voice cracking, "on the mountain road." Rachel's world fell apart at that moment. "Where is he? Which hospital?" she asked, trying to stay calm while Lily cried in her arms. Ethan's father placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Other car it went off the cliff. With the storm and the river's current—" "No!" Rachel screamed, refusing to hear the rest. "No, he can't. He'll come back." The next words reached her as if through a dense fog. Rescue teams, dangerous conditions, body not found, minimal chances of survival. The days that followed were a blur of pain, searches that led nowhere. Helicopters flying over the area, divers combing the river, hope dwindling by the hour. After a week, the search was officially called off. "I'm sorry, but we have to be realistic," the officer in charge had told Rachel. "No one could have survived that fall, and with the river's current, a funeral without a body, a headstone with Ethan's name, but nothing beneath it. Empty condolences, and then silence." Ethan's parents offered financial assistance, which she firmly refused. Pride was all she had left, besides Lily. She preferred to struggle alone rather than rely on the family who had always treated her as unworthy, a temporary distraction in their son's life. "Ethan would want you to accept," his mother had insisted, trying to hand her a thick envelope. "Ethan would want to be here to watch his daughter grow," Rachel replied, closing the door. It was the last time they spoke. A noise in the hallway brought Rachel back to the present. She quickly wiped the tears she hadn't even noticed were falling and put the photos back in the box. Lily appeared at the bedroom door, her hair still wet from the shower, wearing her unicorn pajamas. "Mom," Were you crying? Rachel forced a smile. Just a little, honey. It's all right now. But Lily, with that uncanny wisdom children sometimes have, wasn't fooled. She climbed onto the bed and sat beside Rachel, her eyes fixed on the box still in her mother's hands. Are those pictures of Dad? Rachel nodded, unable to lie. Can I see? Hesitating for a moment, Rachel ended up taking out the photo of Ethan holding newborn Lily. She handed it to her daughter, who studied it curiously. Is that me when I was a baby? Yes. And that's your dad, holding you for the first time in the hospital. Lily ran her fingers over the image, as if trying to feel some connection to the man in the picture. He looks like he liked me. He loved you very much, Lily. Then why is he alive and has another daughter? The direct question, uttered with the brutal honesty only children possess, hit Rachel like a punch to the stomach. How could she explain something she herself didn't understand? I don't know, honey. I truly believed he died in an accident. Who told you that? His parents? Your grandparents? Rachel bit her lip, feeling the anger flare again. There was a car accident, and everyone thought that he hadn't survived. But he survived. It seems like he did. Lily was silent for a few moments, processing the information. Her eyes, so much like Ethan's, filled with tears. You said he was dead. So now he has another family. The cruel innocence of that question made Rachel's heart tighten. How could she protect her daughter from this painful truth? How to explain the complexity of a world where loved ones could simply disappear and reappear with new lives, new loves, new children? Rachel took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Yes, it looks like he has another family now, but that doesn't mean he didn't love you, Lily. When you were born, he was the proudest dad in the world. Then why didn't he come back for us? The question that had haunted Rachel from the moment she saw Ethan in the school courtyard. I don't know, my love. Sometimes life is complicated. Sometimes people make choices that are hard to understand. Rachel put her arm around Lily's shoulders, pulling her closer. But one thing I know for sure, not having your dad around wasn't my choice. I would have given anything for you to grow up with him by your side. That girl with him, she looked like me. Rachel nodded, realizing Lily had noticed the resemblance too. Is she my sister? The question took Rachel by surprise. She had never considered it from that angle, but it made sense Lily would jump to that conclusion. I don't know, honey. Maybe. She's lucky, Lily whispered, tears now flowing freely. She has a dad. Rachel felt as though her heart was being torn to shreds. She pulled Lily into a tight hug, letting her own pain mix with her daughter's. You have a dad too, Lily. He just isn't here with us. But why? Lily's voice was muffled against Rachel's chest. Doesn't he like us anymore? That's not it, I'm sure. There must be an explanation. Rachel tried to sound confident, though she was as confused and hurt as Lily. Maybe he lost his memory in the accident, or maybe someone kept him from finding us. They were weak explanations, and Rachel knew it. But they were the only ones she could offer without completely destroying Lily's image of her dad. We'll find out what happened, okay? Together. Lily pulled back slightly, wiping her tears on the back of her hands. Promise. I promise. Rachel kissed the top of her daughter's head. Now, how about we order that pizza? Lily nodded, though her face still showed the confusion and pain of the revelation. Rachel knew this was only the beginning of the conversation. There would be more questions, more tears, more struggle to understand a situation that defied logic or fairness. As she ordered the pizza over the phone, Rachel glanced at Lily, who was now flipping through a book in the living room, though her eyes didn't seem to focus on the pages. Her heart filled with a fierce determination. For 9 years, she had believed the lie of Ethan's death. She had raised Lily alone, facing sleepless nights, unpaid bills, and loneliness. She had cried until she had no more tears, then rebuilt herself from the ashes of a shattered dream. And now she realized it had all been based on lies. Someone would have to answer for that. Someone would have to explain why 9 years of their lives, 9 years of Lily's relationship with her father, had been stolen by such a cruel deception. As she served pizza to her daughter, Rachel made a decision. It was not just for her but for Lily. Her daughter deserved to know the truth, no matter what it was. She deserved to meet her father, to understand why he had not been in her life. "Mom," Lily asked, pulling Rachel from her thoughts, "do you think he'll want to meet me?" The question, posed so uncertainly, broke Rachel's heart. Even with all the anger she felt toward Ethan at that moment, she couldn't allow Lily to think for a second that she wasn't worthy of her father's love. "Of course he will, honey. Everyone who meets you loves you. It's impossible not to love you." The small smile that appeared on Lily's face was like a ray of sunshine on a stormy day, faint but present, a promise that somehow they'd find a way through this. Rachel knew it wouldn't be easy. Confronting Ethan, discovering the truth, dealing with the consequences, all of it seemed like an impossible mountain to climb. But for Lily, she would climb any mountain, face any storm, challenge any adversary, even if that adversary was the man who had once been the love of her life. A week had passed since that unexpected encounter at the end of semester celebration. Rachel had avoided the school in the days that followed, coming up with excuses so she wouldn't have to drop Lily off herself. A neighbor friend had taken on the responsibility of picking Lily up and dropping her off, while Rachel claimed non-existent work obligations. But today, there was no escape. It was parent-teacher conference day. Attendance was mandatory. Rachel had considered skipping, but she knew she couldn't postpone the inevitable forever. At some point, she'd have to face the reality that had abruptly forced its way into her life. "You look beautiful, Mom," Lily commented as Rachel adjusted her hair for the third time in front of the mirror. "Thank you, honey." Rachel forced a smile, trying to hide her nervousness. She had chosen her best jeans and a navy blue blouse that brought out her eyes. Light makeup, hair down. She told herself she wasn't dressing to impress anyone. She just wanted to feel confident for whatever might happen. The entire drive to the school, Lily chatted about her friends and teachers, apparently forgetting the discovery that had turned their world upside down the previous week. Rachel listened with half an ear, her mind occupied with countless possible scenarios. What if Ethan was there? What would she say? How would she react? The school was bustling when they arrived. Parents and children crowded the hallways, heading to their respective classrooms for the scheduled meetings. Rachel held Lily's hand firmly, her eyes unconsciously scanning every face, searching for him. "First we talk to your teacher, then we'll go by the art room to see your drawing on display, okay?" Rachel said, trying to maintain an air of normalcy. "Then can we get ice cream after?" Lily asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "We'll see." Rachel smiled, genuinely this time. It was hard to resist Lily's excitement. The meeting with the teacher went smoothly. Lily was doing well academically, curious and engaged. Nothing Rachel didn't already know. She spoke briefly with the teacher about Lily's progress in math, her favorite subject, and about how well she'd adapted after switching classrooms earlier in the year. "Lily has a special way with the other kids," Ms. Miller remarked, adjusting her glasses. "She's always ready to help classmates who are struggling." Rachel felt that familiar warmth of pride in her chest. Despite everything, she was raising an amazing daughter. After the meeting, they headed to the art room as promised. The month's theme was "My Favorite Place," and Lily's drawing showed a colorful house with a flower garden and 3 stick figures in front. "Is that our apartment?" Rachel asked, though she knew it wasn't. Their apartment didn't have a garden. "No, Mom. It's my dream house," Lily explained, pointing to the figures. "See, these are us." Rachel looked more closely at the drawing and noticed there were indeed 3 figures, one tall with long hair, clearly Rachel, one small, obviously Lily, and one male figure. Rachel's heart ached. Even without asking, she knew who the third figure was. That was the moment she felt a chill run down her spine. Even without looking, she knew he was there. It was as if her entire body was reacting to his presence, an infallible radar that even 9 years of separation hadn't turned off. Slowly, she turned her head toward the door, and there he was. Ethan had entered the room holding the hand of a girl Rachel recognized as Leah. The child wore a light green dress and had her hair in 2 side braids, each decorated with small ribbons matching the dress. He bent down to whisper something in her ear, then smiled in that familiar way Rachel knew so well. "Mom, look, it's her. "The girl who looks like me," Lily whispered, tugging on Rachel's sleeve. Rachel just nodded, unable to speak. It felt like her legs had turned to lead, preventing her from leaving as her mind screamed at her to do. Ethan hadn't noticed them yet. He and Leah were chatting animatedly in front of a drawing on the opposite wall. The girl gestured with enthusiasm, pointing at different parts of her work, while Ethan listened intently, making comments that made her laugh. Something in their interaction squeezed Rachel's heart. The genuine affection, the unmistakable closeness. Leah looked at her dad with adoration, and he returned it with the same pride Rachel remembered so well, the same look he'd had in those old photos with baby Lily. Rachel studied Leah more carefully. The girl had a contagious joy, the kind that lit up her surroundings. She was expressive, and when she smiled, dimples formed in her cheeks just like Lily's. She bore Ethan's features, just as Lily did. "She drew a whale," Lily noted, observing Leah and Ethan. "Can I go see it up close?" Before Rachel could answer, Lily had already let go of her hand and crossed the room to look at the drawing that had caught her eye. Rachel felt panic rising as she watched her daughter approach Ethan and Leah. "I like whales too," Lily said, stopping beside Leah. "Your drawing is really pretty." Leah seemed startled for a moment, but quickly smiled shyly. "Thanks. I watched a documentary about whales last week." "Cool. They can stay underwater for a really long time, right?" "Yeah. A minke whale can stay under for up to 20 minutes, Leah explained, her face lighting up as she spoke about her new interest. "And the blue whale is the largest animal that's ever existed." "Bigger than dinosaurs?" Lily asked, impressed. "Uh-huh. Bigger than a T-Rex or even a Brachiosaurus." The two girls started chatting like old friends, their initial shyness replaced by shared enthusiasm. Rachel stood rooted to the spot, frozen, while Ethan finally looked up and noticed her. The impact was visible. He froze, eyes locked on Rachel like he was seeing a ghost. And perhaps to him, she was exactly that, a ghost from a past he had left behind. For a moment, their gazes crossed the room. Time seemed to stop. All the sounds, the voices, laughter, footsteps faded away. There was only the two of them, connected by an invisible thread of shared memories and unanswered questions. In Ethan's expression, Rachel saw a rapid sequence of emotions, surprise, confusion, something akin to guilt. She knew that in her own eyes, he could see 9 years of pain, questions, and a life built on lies. The tension was broken by Leah, who tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Daddy, this is my new friend. Her name is Lily." Ethan finally tore his gaze away from Rachel, turning to the girls. "Hi, Lily," he said, his voice slightly shaky. "Nice to meet you." "Hi," Lily answered, studying his face with a curiosity that Rachel found almost painful to witness. Rachel knew she had to do something. She approached them, feeling as though she were walking through quicksand. "Lily, it's getting late. We need to go," she managed, avoiding direct eye contact with Ethan. "But Mom, I just met Leah. She likes whales and dolphins too." Rachel noticed Ethan flinch slightly when Lily called her Mom. He now looked between Rachel and Lily, as though trying to piece together a connection he hadn't realized before. His gaze lingered on Lily's face for a few extra seconds, taking in features that must have seemed oddly familiar. "Do you know each other?" Ethan asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. Rachel opened her mouth to answer, but the words got stuck in her throat. What could she say? "Yes, we know each other very well. You're the father of my child, the same man I thought was dead for 9 years. There was no simple way to say it. Before she could formulate a response, Leah spoke again. "Can we show Lily the other drawing? Dad, the one with the mermaid?" Ethan looked momentarily relieved by the interruption. "Sure, sweetheart. It's right over there." The girls moved a few steps away, leaving Rachel and Ethan in a silence thick with unasked questions. "Your daughter. She's really beautiful," Ethan said, clearly trying to fill the void with something neutral. "She's 8, Rachel replied, the words coming out sharper than intended. Ethan nodded, as though absorbing the information. "Leah is 6. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Rachel could practically hear her own heartbeat pulsing in her ears. There was so much to say, so many questions to ask, yet the words felt impossible. "I never thought," Ethan began, but stopped, seeming unsure how to continue. "That we'd see each other again," Rachel finished, unable to hide the bitterness in her voice. Ethan looked genuinely confused. "I didn't—" Once again, the girls interrupted as they returned, excited. "Mom, Leah invited me to play at the park tomorrow. Can we go?" Lily asked, her eyes pleading. Rachel glanced at Leah, who was smiling hopefully, then at Ethan, whose face was a mix of confusion and what looked like fear. "We'll see, sweetheart. Right now, we need to go." "But the ice cream, another day," Rachel cut her off, taking Lily's hand firmly. "It was nice meeting you," she said, practically choking on the words. As they turned to leave, Lily spun around suddenly. "Wait, I want to show him something." Before Rachel could stop her, Lily pulled a small notebook from the backpack she was carrying. She flipped a few pages and took out a folded photograph. "Look," she said, extending the picture toward Ethan. "Mom showed me a photo of you. She said you were my dad." The world seemed to stop again. Rachel felt as though the ground had vanished beneath her feet. The photo, one of those she kept in the box, the one showing Ethan holding newborn Lily in the hospital, was now in his hands. Ethan looked at the photo, confusion crossing his face. Then his eyes widened, moving between the image in his hand and Lily's face, searching for and finding similarities that couldn't be denied. The shape of the eyes, the smile, even the slight tilt of the head when curious, all of it shouted that she was his daughter. "What?" he began, but words seemed to fail him. "Lily, where did you get that?" Rachel asked, her own voice nearly unrecognizable even to herself. "I took it from your box," Lily replied, as though it were obvious. "I wanted to show him that I knew." Leah was watching, puzzled, looking at her dad, at Lily, at the photo clutched in Ethan's trembling hands. "Daddy," she asked, tugging on his sleeve. "Do you know them?" I'm not sure," Ethan answered, his voice rough. His eyes found Rachel's, silently asking for explanations she wasn't ready to give. "Not here. Not like this." "We need to go," Rachel said abruptly, taking the photo from his hands and placing it back into Lily's notebook. "Let's go, Lily." "But Mom, now, Lily." Her tone left no room for argument. As she pulled Lily from the room, Rachel sensed more than saw Ethan try to follow them. "Wait," he called out, his voice regaining some strength. "Rachel, wait!" Rachel quickened her pace, practically running to the parking lot. Only when they were safely inside the car, doors locked, did she allow herself to breathe again. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. "Mom, why are we running?" Lily asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I just wanted to show him." "I know, honey." Rachel tried to steady her own voice, which threatened to break. But it wasn't the right time. When will it be the right time? The simple question, spoken with a child's innocence, had no easy answer. Rachel started the car, her hands still shaking. In the rearview mirror, she saw Ethan emerging from the building, looking around frantically. Leah stood at his side, holding his hand, clearly confused by the whole situation. Pulling away as quickly as she could without drawing attention, Rachel tried to organize her thoughts. Ethan's expression upon seeing the photo, upon hearing Lily's words, had been one of genuine shock, as though he truly didn't know, as though it had never crossed his mind that— But how was that possible? How could he not know his own child? And what did that mean for the story Rachel had believed for 9 years? Next to her, Lily was silent, staring out the window. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "He didn't like me?" she asked quietly, almost in a whisper. Rachel felt her heart break again. She reached out and wiped Lily's tear away. "It's not that, my love. He was just surprised. All this is new to him, too." "He didn't know I was his daughter?" Rachel swallowed hard. How to explain something she herself couldn't understand? "I don't know, honey. It seemed like he didn't." "But how can that be? You didn't tell him." Another question with no easy answer. How do you explain to an 8-year-old the complexities of a situation you don't fully grasp yourself? "It's complicated, Lily. I promise we'll talk more about it when we get home." The silence that followed was heavy. Rachel knew she had just promised answers she didn't have, How could she explain the inexplicable? How could she make sense of a past that now seemed built on lies? "I like Leah," Lily commented after a while. "She's nice. And she likes the same things I do." Rachel nodded, unable to trust her voice at that moment. She had noticed the immediate bond between the girls, as though something, perhaps the blood they shared, drew them together before they even knew it. "Could she be my sister?" Lily asked, hope in her voice. "Since we have the same dad." Rachel took a deep breath. "Maybe, honey, we need to figure out what's really going on." As she drove, her mind returned to that brief moment when her eyes had met Ethan's. The shock she saw in them looked too real to be faked, and that only raised more questions. If Ethan really didn't know about Lily, then who had lied? Who orchestrated their separation, leading Rachel to believe Ethan was dead while seemingly keeping Ethan ignorant of his daughter's existence? And most importantly, why? Rachel gripped the steering wheel so tightly her fingers went white. The puzzle she thought she knew, the tragic loss of the love of her life, the struggle to raise her daughter alone, now had entirely new pieces, and nothing was fitting together anymore. "Can we go back tomorrow to play with Leah?" Lily asked, breaking the silence again. "She said she'd bring her whale toys." Rachel hesitated. Part of her wanted to run away, take Lily far, protect her from a truth not even Rachel understood. But another part knew there was no turning back now. The truth, whatever it was, had emerged from the shadows, where it had been hidden for 9 years. "We'll see, Lily. First, we need to have a talk about all of this." She glanced at her daughter out of the corner of her eye. Her little girl, so brave, so curious, so eager to meet her father. Rachel felt a fierce determination building inside her. Lily deserved to know her dad. She deserved to understand her own story. And now that the first contact had happened, chaotic though it was, there was no retreat Ethan, she was certain, would be searching for answers. And the next time they met, Rachel would need to be ready to confront a past that had come back from the dead, bringing more questions than answers. Rachel didn't know how she had ended up here, sitting in a quiet cafe outside the downtown area, far from the girls' school, far from curious eyes, far from anything that could interrupt the conversation she was about to have. In front of her, a cup of tea remained untouched, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. 3 days had passed since the incident at school, 3 days of unanswered calls, short messages asking for time, Lily asking questions Rachel still couldn't fully answer. Then, that morning, she finally responded, "We can meet, just the two of us." The little doorbell jingled. Rachel didn't need to look up to know it was him. Even after all these years, her body still sensed Ethan's presence as though it were part of her. Ethan approached the table, hesitated briefly, then sat down. He looked tired, as though he too hadn't slept much lately. The circles under his eyes betrayed sleepless nights, likely haunted by the same questions troubling Rachel. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," he said softly. Rachel only nodded, still unable to look him directly in the eye. Silence stretched between them, heavy with 9 years of absence. "Lily, she's—" Ethan started but trailed off, as if he couldn't form the question burning on his lips. "She's my daughter," Rachel finished, finally raising her eyes to meet his. "Our daughter." The confirmation, though he surely suspected it after seeing the photo, hit him like a physical blow. Ethan went pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "How? When?" The words came out haltingly, like his mind couldn't process it all at once. "She was born 7 months after you died," Rachel replied, bitterness lacing her emphasis on the last word. "A healthy baby girl, weighing about 7 pounds, difficult labor, and I was alone." Ethan ran his hands over his face, clearly shaken. "Rachel, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "How could you not know?" Rachel's voice rose a notch, the anger she'd held in for days finally breaking free. "I was 2 months pregnant when you disappeared. We celebrated together when we found out." "I don't—" Ethan seemed genuinely confused. "I don't remember any pregnancy." Rachel felt like she'd been slapped. "What? Rachel?" Ethan spoke slowly, as though choosing each word with care. "What exactly were you told about what happened to me?" Rachel looked perplexed. Your parents came to me that night. They said there'd been an accident on the mountain road. Your car went off the cliff, and with the storm and the river's current, your body was never found." She took a deep breath, reliving the horror. "They searched for a week. When the search was called off, your parents held a funeral. I placed flowers on an empty casket, Ethan." Ethan's hands were visibly trembling now. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to absorb everything. "There was an accident," he finally said, "but not like they told you. I didn't die, obviously. I was in a coma for almost a month. When I woke up, I had partial amnesia. The doctor said it was common with brain trauma." "You lost your memory," Rachel repeated, incredulous. "Partially. I remembered my parents, my childhood, college, but the last few years before the accident were fragmented. They still are, in many ways." A cold fury rose in Rachel. "And your parents never mentioned me? Never spoke about us?" "They said I'd ended a troubled relationship shortly before the accident. That it was best not to dwell on it. That it might hinder my recovery." "A troubled relationship?" Rachel's voice trembled with indignation. "We were together for 3 years. We lived together. We were going to have a baby." Ethan looked deeply ashamed. "I didn't know, Rachel. I swear I didn't know." "So they lied." "To both of us." Rachel felt a tear slip down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. "They made me believe you were dead, while convincing you I wasn't important. That explains why they were so insistent on sending me abroad after I got out of the hospital," Ethan murmured, more to himself. "Paris first, then London. I only came back 2 years ago when my dad had his first heart attack." Rachel tried to piece it all together. The magnitude of the betrayal was far beyond anything she had imagined. "And Leah? I met her mother in London. We married quickly. It was more of a convenient arrangement than true love. She wanted status. I wanted a family, something normal after everything I'd been through. We separated when I returned here, but we share custody of Leah." Rachel shook her head in disbelief. Her entire life had been based on an elaborate lie. "Ethan, I raised Lily alone. I finished college with a baby in my arms. I worked 3 different jobs to pay the bills. I stayed up all night when she was sick. I celebrated every little milestone with no one to share it with." Her voice grew steadier, more determined. "I built a life for us, a good life, in spite of everything, and you have no right to just show up now and expect everything to change." "I'm not expecting that," Ethan replied, his own voice trembling with emotion. "But she's my daughter too, Rachel. A daughter I didn't know existed until a few days ago. And Lily is my daughter who had to grow up believing her father was dead, because it was easier than telling her he just wasn't around." Tense silence followed. The raw, painful truth hovered between them like an unbridgeable chasm. "What do we do now?" Ethan finally asked, looking lost. Rachel exhaled slowly. The anger was still there, boiling under the surface, but now mixed with something else. If Ethan's story was true, and her instincts told her it was, then he was also a victim of a cruel deception. "I don't know," she answered honestly, "but I know Lily deserves to know her father. And you deserve to know your daughter." "And us?" Ethan asked, a hint of hope in his voice. Rachel shook her head firmly. "There is no us, Ethan. Not anymore. We're just 2 people who share a child and a past that was stolen from us." Something in Ethan's gaze broke at those words, revealing a deep, genuine pain. Rachel felt a twinge of compassion despite everything. He too had lost 9 years of his life, built on lies. "We'll do this properly for Lily," she continued. "Proper introductions, time for you two to get to know each other, but everything on my terms. Lily is my priority." Ethan nodded, his face etched with guilt, shock, and loss. "I just want to be part of her life in some way. If you'll let me." "It's not about my letting you," Rachel replied. "It's about doing what's best for an 8-year-old who just found out the dad she thought was dead is alive and has another family." Her words seemed to cut Ethan like a blade. Tears gathered in his eyes, which he tried to hold back. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said softly. "I know," Rachel answered just as softly. "But that doesn't change what happened." As she watched Ethan struggle with the weight of these revelations, Rachel felt her 9-year-old anger begin to redirect itself to where it truly belonged. Not at the broken man before her, but at the people who had orchestrated their separation so coldly. And she sensed that this conversation was only the beginning of a far more complex and painful story than either of them could imagine. 2 weeks had passed since that talk in the cafe. 2 weeks in which Ethan's world had been completely turned upside down. Discovering he had a daughter, an 8-year-old girl who grew up believing he was dead, changed something fundamental within him. The first official meeting between Ethan and Lily took place at a local park, with Rachel present the whole time. It was awkward at first, as expected. How do you approach a child who is part of you but whom you don't know? How do you build in hours what should have taken years? "Do you like ice cream?" he asked, making a clumsy attempt to break the ice. "Yes, strawberry," Lily replied, swinging her legs from the bench, her curious eyes studying his every feature. "Me too," Ethan said with a smile. "I guess you got that from me." The shy grin Lily gave in return melted something inside him. After that first meeting, there were others, always with Rachel around, always in public places, always with carefully defined boundaries. Ethan respected that. In fact, he admired the job Rachel had done raising Lily on her own. The girl was smart, kind, and inquisitive, everything any parent could hope for. A daughter he hadn't known existed. A daughter who had been stolen from him by a cruel deception perpetrated by his own parents. The anger he felt toward them was a volcano threatening to erupt at any moment. He confronted his father once, over the phone, but the man hung up as soon as Ethan started asking questions about Rachel and the pregnancy. His mother, when contacted, simply said they'd done what was best for him, as if taking away the chance to know his own child could ever be justified. Ethan was lost in these thoughts when the door to his home office opened. Vanessa, his current wife, though that status was hanging by a thread, entered without knocking, as she always did. Even after they had filed for divorce, they still shared the same house, a temporary arrangement that had lasted longer than either wanted, mainly for Leah's sake. "Didn't you hear me calling? I've been shouting for 10 minutes, she said, her accusatory tone becoming her trademark over the years. "Sorry, I was distracted." Vanessa crossed her arms, staring at him with narrowed eyes. "Leah said you're taking her to play with that girl again." It wasn't a question, but an accusation. In recent days, since Leah and Lily had met, the girls had developed an instant friendship. It was as though, in some way, the blood they shared had connected them before they even knew they were sisters. "Her name is Lily," Ethan answered calmly, though he felt his patience waning. "And yes, I'm taking them to the kids' water park on Saturday, and that woman will be there, I suppose." The way Vanessa said, "that woman," never using Rachel's name, was yet another small irritation in a growing list. "Rachel will be there. Yes, she's Lily's mother. And apparently your ex. Funny how you never mentioned her all these years." Ethan took a deep breath. He had explained the situation to Vanessa, or at least what he knew of it, the partial memory loss, the parental manipulation, the recent discovery of another daughter. She had listened, but not really heard. In her mind, it all boiled down to a potential threat to her comfortable lifestyle. "I never mentioned her because I didn't remember her. How could I talk about someone missing from my memories?" "Convenient," Vanessa replied, sarcasm dripping from the word. "And now you're ready to throw everything away for a woman you barely know and a girl who might not even be yours." The insinuation made Ethan's blood boil. "Lily is my daughter, there's no doubt. And I'm not throwing everything away. You and I were already separated before all this." Vanessa gave a cold smirk. "Separated on paper, maybe, but I always thought we'd eventually get back together. It was just a phase." "No, it wasn't. And you know that." She stepped closer, her expression turning calculating. "Think about what you're doing, Ethan. Think about your career, your position in society. The Lamberts will be at the charity gala on Saturday. Mr. Lambert specifically mentioned wanting to discuss a partnership with you. Leah's really looking forward to the water park. I'm not cancelling. Send your driver with her. Then, you don't have to attend every little kid's outing." This attitude was precisely what had led to their marriage's collapse. The constant expectation that career, status, and appearances took precedence over family, even over Leah. I'm not leaving my daughter with the driver, so I can go to a party where adults pretend to care about causes while they network and show off. That's how the world works, Ethan. That's how we've built our place in society. Vanessa threw up her hands in frustration. But you've always been too naive to understand that. Ethan shook his head, tired of this circular argument they'd had so many times. Leah's happy she found Lily. They get along so well. Of course they do, Vanessa said, her tone artificially sweetening. Leah has a good heart. She accepts anyone. But I don't think it's healthy for her to hang around. Well, you know. No, I don't know, Ethan retorted, feeling his irritation rise. What's unhealthy about it? Vanessa rolled her eyes, as if explaining something obvious to a child. I don't want my daughter mingling with that poor girl. They're not like us. Her words struck Ethan like a slap. Was that what their marriage had been about? Living in a bubble of privilege and prejudice, disguised as sophistication. Poor, he repeated, his voice low but brimming with indignation. Rachel is a marketing manager, has her own apartment, raises her daughter alone, and from what I can tell, Lily has never lacked anything essential. You know what I mean, Vanessa insisted, shifting uncomfortably at his direct confrontation. They don't move in the same circles as we do. They don't have the same opportunities, the same upbringing. Lily is in the same school as Leah. Yes, probably on a scholarship. With every word, Ethan felt a growing disgust, not just for Vanessa, but for the life he'd lived these past years, a life centered on appearances, superficial connections, and judging people by their bank accounts rather than their character. Lily is my daughter too, he said, each word enunciated slowly, charged with controlled anger. You should be ashamed of talking about her like that. Vanessa seemed momentarily taken aback by his tone. Ethan rarely asserted himself so firmly. I'm thinking of what's best for Leah, she finally said, regaining her posture. I don't want her building up some little sister fantasy with a girl she barely knows. It's up to Rachel and me to decide when and how to tell them they're sisters, Ethan responded, and we'll do it when both girls are ready. A tense silence settled between them. Vanessa eyed him as though looking at a stranger. You've changed, she finally said. Ever since you found that woman and her daughter. No, Vanessa. I'm finally discovering who I really am, beneath years of conditioning and lost memories, he sighed. Maybe it's time we finalize our separation once and for all. This arrangement isn't working for anyone. Her face hardened. Think carefully about what you're doing, Ethan. I could make things very difficult if I wanted to. The veiled threat hung in the air between them. I'm taking Leah to the water park on Saturday to meet Lily and Rachel, Ethan said firmly. If you want to go to the charity gala, go. If you want to join us at the park, you're welcome. But that's my decision. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment, as though deciding her next move. Finally, she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to make the photo frames on the table rattle. Ethan sank into his chair, running his hands over his face. He was tired of the lies, the social games, the false pretenses. In just a few weeks, his life had been utterly transformed, and surprisingly, he felt more authentic now than he ever had before. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Rachel. Lily's not feeling well, she said bluntly. It's just a cold, nothing serious, but I think we'll have to skip the water park. I'm sorry. Is she okay? She'll be fine. She just needs rest and plenty of fluids. An uncomfortable pause. Even after several conversations, the distance between them remained. How could they rebuild a bond with someone you once loved deeply, but had only fragments of memory left? Leah's going to be disappointed, Ethan admitted. She's been talking about the water park all week. Another silence. Ethan could hear Rachel's soft breathing on the other end, as if she were weighing something. Ewan could bring her here, Rachel finally said. Just a quick visit. Lily's upset she'll miss the outing. Seeing Leah might cheer her up. The offer surprised Ethan. It would be the first time Rachel suggested he come to her home. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. It's just a visit, Rachel clarified, her tone making it clear there would be limits. Lily would like to see you both. We'll come then. After they hung up, Ethan felt a strange mixture of anxiety and hope. It was a small step, being invited to Rachel's apartment, but a meaningful one. He had no romantic illusions. What they'd had was in the past, buried under years of separation and different lives. But there was Lily, and for her sake, they could build some kind of friendly relationship. On Saturday, he and Leah arrived at Rachel's modest yet cozy apartment. Ethan felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as though part of him recognized this space even though he'd never been there. Lily lay on the couch under a blanket, her nose red, eyes a bit tired, but her face lit up when she saw Leah. "You came," she exclaimed, trying to sit up. "Stay lying down," Rachel said gently, tucking the blanket around her. "Leah can sit here with you." While the girls chatted happily, sharing books and stories, Rachel gestured for Ethan to follow her into the kitchen. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Lily was really sad about missing the trip. "It's nothing." Leah was excited to see Lily too. Rachel nodded, busying herself with making tea. Her movements were efficient and practical, so different from Vanessa's theatrical, performative manner. "How are you handling all this?" she asked after a moment, surprising Ethan with her directness. "Honestly, I'm still processing. It's a lot to take in." "I can imagine." "How about you?" Rachel shrugged slightly. "Day by day." "Lily asks a lot of questions I don't always have answers to." "I know the feeling, Leah too." Ethan hesitated, wondering if he should share his next thought. "She asked yesterday if Lily was her sister. She notices the resemblance." Rachel froze in the act of pouring tea. "What did you tell her?" "That it was an important conversation we all needed to have together once Lily feels better." A sigh escaped Rachel's lips. "I don't think we can put it off much longer. They're too smart." "Agreed." Another silence, less tense than previous ones but still heavy with unspoken words. "How are things at home?" Rachel finally asked, choosing her words carefully. Ethan knew she was referring to Vanessa. He'd mentioned the situation briefly in one of their earlier conversations. "Complicated, but we're speeding up our plans for a final separation." Rachel just nodded, not pressing for details. It was one thing Ethan noticed about her. She never intruded on spaces not explicitly open to her. She kept a respectful distance, allowing him close only for Lily's sake. From the other room, the sound of children's laughter drifted in. A laughter Ethan was learning to recognize, his daughter's laughter. A girl he should have seen grow up. "They get along well," he said. "Yes," Rachel agreed, a small smile forming. "It's like they've known each other for years." "Maybe it's the blood," Ethan suggested. "Some invisible bond connecting them beyond what they consciously know." Rachel didn't respond immediately, placing 2 mugs of tea on the countertop. "Or maybe they're just 2 kids who like each other," she finally said, handing him a mug. "Sometimes things really are that simple." Ethan took the tea, his fingers briefly brushing hers. The contact was accidental and fleeting, but enough to send an electric current up his arm. Rachel seemed to feel it too. She withdrew her hand quickly, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Let's take this to the living room," she said, avoiding his eyes. "Lily probably wants her tea." Following her back into the living room, Ethan realized something fundamental had shifted within him. The priorities that had once seemed so important, career, social standing, networking, now felt empty compared to the sound of his daughter's laughter. Even if Rachel kept her defenses up, and she had every right to, he was determined to be the father Lily deserved, and the father Leah had always needed, but rarely had. That simple moment in a modest apartment, with 2 girls sharing stories and laughter, felt more real than all the high society galas and business dinners he'd ever attended. It was a small but significant first step, a step toward a more authentic life. One measured not in bank balances or social connections, but in the genuine smiles of 2 girls who, without knowing it, were sisters. 1 month had passed since that first visit to Rachel's apartment. What began as an awkward meeting had turned into a routine everyone eagerly awaited. On Saturdays, Ethan would pick up both girls for a day out, usually at a park or some outdoor activity. On Wednesdays, when Rachel had her weekly meeting that ran late, He stayed with the girls at Rachel's place, helping with homework and cooking dinner. It was a particularly sunny Wednesday afternoon when Ethan decided to take the girls to the park near Rachel's apartment. Leah had brought her box of colored chalk, and Lily clutched a book about constellations Ethan had given her the previous week. "Can we draw on the sidewalk at the park?" Leah asked, shaking her box of chalk. "Sure, as long as it's in the designated area," Ethan answered, holding each girl's hand as they crossed the street. The park was quiet at that time of day. A few mums with babies in strollers, 2 elderly men playing chess, a dog chasing a ball. They found a perfect spot under a large tree, near enough to the paved area where the girls could draw. Ethan spread out a checkered picnic blanket, the same one they used for their weekly picnics, and took out sandwiches, sliced apples, and homemade cookies Lily had helped bake over the weekend. "Shall we eat first, then draw?" he suggested, knowing the answer. The girls had developed their own little rituals. "Sandwiches first, then cookies," Lily announced solemnly, making Leah giggle. It was a rule they'd established on their first picnic when they fought over who got the last cookie. As the girls ate, Ethan watched them with a mix of joy and melancholy. Leah, having just turned 6, had an exuberance that perfectly contrasted Lily's more reflective nature. They complemented each other, as if they'd grown up together their whole lives. "Dad, tell us that story from when you were little and built a treehouse," Leah requested, her mouth still full of sandwich. "Chew before you speak, young lady," Ethan chided gently. "And I told you that story 3 times just last week. But Lily didn't hear the part where you fell and broke your arm." "You broke your arm?" Lily asked, wide-eyed. "It was just a minor fracture," Ethan said, smiling as he gave in. "I was about your age." While he recounted the now familiar tale of his disastrous treehouse project, he noticed how Lily hung on every word, as if trying to reconstruct the childhood memories she never shared with him. In those moments, he felt an even deeper sting of guilt, an emotional guilt, though logically he knew it wasn't his fault, for missing the years with Lily. After they finished lunch, the girls rushed to the paved area, eager to create their masterpieces. Leah drew a colorful house with a tree beside it. Lily focused on recreating some of the constellations she'd been studying. "Look, this is Orion," she explained to Leah, pointing at the dots she'd drawn. "And this is the Big Dipper. It kind of looks like a ladle, see?" Leah tilted her head, trying to see the bear in the connected dots. "It looks more like a pot." Both burst into laughter, that uncontrollable, infectious kind only children can produce. Ethan smiled, snapping a photo with his phone to show Rachel later. In those little moments, a picnic in the park, an afternoon drawing with chalk, shared laughter over constellations that looked like pots, Ethan felt he was finally building something real, something money or high society events couldn't buy. Later, as the shadows began to lengthen and it was time to head back, Leah gripped his hand tighter than usual. "Dad," she said, her voice suddenly serious, "why does Lily look so much like me?" The question took Ethan by surprise. He and Rachel had discussed when to tell the girls the truth, but they hadn't reached a firm conclusion. Rachel thought they needed more time to adjust to each other. Ethan feared the longer they waited, the harder it would be. "What do you think you two have in common?" he asked, trying to buy time. "Our smiles," Leah replied immediately. "Our eyes, and that thing we do when we're thinking." "What thing?" "This," Leah demonstrated, furrowing her brow and lightly biting her lower lip, exactly the way Lily did when she was concentrating. Ethan felt his chest tighten. These were gestures he himself made, unconscious habits passed down through genes. "You're right," he said softly. "You two share a lot." Leah looked over at Lily, who walked a few steps ahead, absorbed in counting the cracks in the sidewalk. "She could be my sister," Leah said, not as a question but almost as a hope. Ethan's heart sped up. Maybe this was the moment, after all. No planning, no carefully orchestrated discussion, just an organic moment, as life often demanded. "Leah," he began, kneeling down to her eye level, "if I tell you a very important secret, do you promise we can talk about it calmly afterward?" The girl's eyes widened, sensing the seriousness in his tone. She nodded solemnly. "Lily is your sister," Ethan said simply. Your older sister. Leah stood still for a moment, processing this. Then, to Ethan's surprise, a huge grin spread across her face. "I knew it," she exclaimed, practically jumping with excitement. "I knew it! I knew it!" "Knew what?" Lily asked, turning around to see what was causing all the fuss. Leah glanced at her dad, as if asking permission to reveal the secret. Ethan nodded slightly. "You're my sister," Leah announced, her voice brimming with joy. Lily froze, wide-eyed, looking to Ethan for confirmation. "It's true," he said softly. "You two are both my daughters." "Which means you're sisters." A heavy silence followed, weighted by the enormity of the revelation. Then, slowly, a smile spread across Lily's face. "I kind of thought so," she whispered. "Mom always changed the subject when I asked." The girls stared at each other for a moment, as though seeing each other in a completely new light. Then, in a sudden move that caught Ethan off guard, Leah took 2 steps forward and hugged Lily. "Now we're officially best friends," she declared, with the simple logic of children. Lily returned the hug, her eyes meeting Ethan's over Leah's shoulder. There were countless questions there, but also something else, a hint of acceptance, maybe even happiness. Watching his daughters embrace, Ethan knew Rachel would likely be upset that he'd made this decision without consulting her. He knew they'd have a lot of explaining to do, difficult conversations, adjustments to be made. But at that moment, seeing the invisible bond between Leah and Lily now recognized, he couldn't regret it. Some truths, once revealed, can't be contained again. Like the love that grew with every park picnic, every chalk drawing, every shared laugh, pure and simple, the love between sisters. The sun was already low on the horizon by the time Ethan parked in front of Rachel's apartment building. The girls had fallen asleep in the back seat, worn out after a full day of playing and discovery. Leah rested her head on Lily's shoulder, while Lily's face was turned toward the window, a slight smile still visible on her lips. Ethan studied them in the rearview mirror, feeling a mix of joy and apprehension. Joy at the scene, his daughters, finally recognizing they were sisters, peacefully dozing side by side. Apprehension for the conversation he knew he'd have to have with Rachel. He'd called Rachel the moment the girls began whispering excitedly about being real sisters. She answered on the first ring as if waiting. "I told them the truth," Ethan said without preamble. "About being sisters." The silence on the other end lasted so long he thought she'd hung up. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she finally replied, her voice steady but carrying a tension he recognized even after all these years. "You weren't supposed to do that on your own." "I know, but it happened naturally, Rachel." Leah asked, and I couldn't lie to her. Another long silence. "Bring them home," she said at last, "and stay so we can talk." The unspoken pleas in her tone didn't escape Ethan's notice. Now, looking up at the modest yet cozy building where Rachel had raised Lily alone, he braced himself for what might be the hardest conversation of his life. "Girls," he called softly, touching their shoulders. "We're here." Lily opened her eyes first, blinking as she oriented herself. A bright smile appeared as she noticed Leah still asleep on her shoulder. "We fell asleep," she said, rubbing her eyes. "Like real sisters." Leah woke with the movement, taking a bit longer to gather her bearings. When she realized where they were, her smile rivaled Lily's in brightness. "Can I stay here tonight, Dad?" she asked hopefully. "Not tonight, sweetheart," Ethan replied, helping them both out of the car. "But maybe another time, if Rachel agrees." Rachel was waiting at the door, her face composed but clearly anxious. The moment Lily saw her, she ran over for a hug. "Mom, did you know we're sisters?" Lily asked, clinging to her mother's waist. Rachel crouched down, hugging Lily and looking over her shoulder at Ethan. There was no direct accusation in her gaze, just resignation and something more complicated he couldn't read. "Yes, honey, I knew," she said simply. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lily asked, her innocence cutting deep. "Sometimes even very important truths need the right moment," Rachel explained gently, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Now, how about you two wash your hands? I made hot chocolate and cookies." The girls didn't need a second invitation. They hurried inside, leaving Rachel and Ethan alone for the first time since he'd arrived. "We might need something stronger than hot chocolate," she said, tipping her head for him to follow her in. The living room was exactly as Ethan remembered, organized but lived in, with books on the shelves, pictures on the walls, a brightly colored blanket thrown over the sofa. He noticed all the photos featured just Rachel and Lily. There was no place for him in the visual narrative of their lives, a silent reminder of lost time. They waited in silence until the girls finished their snacks and went to Lily's room, eager to play with the seashell collection she kept in a special box. Rachel poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to Ethan before sitting in the armchair opposite him, maintaining a physical distance that felt like a territorial boundary. "They seem happy," Ethan ventured, trying to start on neutral ground. "Of course they are. For them, it's like a magical adventure, finding out your best friend is actually your sister." Rachel took a sip of wine. "But we both know reality is a lot more complicated." "Rachel, I'm sorry I told them without talking to you first. I didn't mean to." "Your intentions don't really matter now, do they?" she interrupted calmly but firmly. "What's done is done. Now we deal with the consequences. And to do that, I need to understand exactly what happened to you these past 9 years." Ethan nodded, knowing he owed her more than a partial explanation. He set his glass down on the coffee table and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "After the accident, when I woke up in the hospital, I remembered very little. I had flashes, disjointed images, feelings, but nothing concrete." He took a deep breath. "The doctors diagnosed partial amnesia, common with traumatic brain injuries. They said some memories might return in time, others might never come back." Rachel listened quietly, her face unreadable. "My parents were there, controlling everything. Who could visit, what information reached me?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "They told me a very convenient version of my life, one in which I'd ended a troublesome relationship right before the accident." "I was the troublesome relationship," Rachel concluded. "You and the entire life we were building together." "A life that didn't fit their plans for me." Ethan paused, recalling the strange conversations, half-truths, carefully filtered information. "When I was discharged, they took me to Paris, supposedly for recovery. In reality, to keep me far from here, far from you. And you never questioned it, never suspected anything." The question stung, but it was fair. "I questioned a lot, Rachel. There were gaps, feelings that things didn't add up. But they were my parents, you know, the people who supposedly cared most about me." He shook his head, bitterness evident. "Besides, part of me was broken. Not just physically, but my sense of identity, who I was fragmented." Rachel stayed silent for a moment, taking it all in. "And Vanessa, when did she enter the picture?" "London, 2 years later. She was the daughter of an important associate of my father's. A marriage of convenience, though I didn't see it that way at the time." Ethan ran a hand over his face, as if wiping away unpleasant memories. "I was trying to rebuild a life that made sense. They introduced her as the logical choice, the next natural step. Were you forced to marry her?" "Not at gunpoint, if that's what you're asking." Ethan smiled sadly. "But when you're lost, vulnerable, with no solid memories to anchor you, it's easy to be led." "And Leah?" The mention of his younger daughter brought genuine warmth to Ethan's eyes. "Leah was the one real good thing from that marriage, a marriage that started as a business deal and quickly became a prison of appearances." Rachel took another sip of wine, her hands trembling slightly, betraying her outward calm. "So why did you come back?" "My father had his first heart attack 2 years ago. They wanted me to return, take on part of the family business. I guess they also wanted to keep an eye on me, make sure I stayed in line." Ethan gazed out the window where dusk was falling. "The irony is that coming back was what finally made me question the version of my life they'd sold me." "How so?" "Familiar places, smells, sounds, things that triggered memory flashes. Fragments of a life that didn't match what they'd told me." He looked back at Rachel. "And then I saw you at that school event. It was like..." "Like what?" "Like a part of me that had been asleep for 9 years suddenly woke up." Rachel averted her eyes, visibly uncomfortable with where the conversation was going. "I'm not trying to romanticize this, Rachel," Ethan said gently. "I know all the damage that's been done." He sighed. "When I found out about Lily, about what my parents really did, how deeply they manipulated us, I can't help but hate myself for being so weak, so easily controlled." "You were a victim, just like I was," Rachel said quietly, surprising both of them with her admission. "Maybe, but you paid a much higher price. You raised our daughter alone, went through everything without support while I lived a privileged life built on lies." Rachel stood abruptly and walked to the window. Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the internal battle she was fighting. "It's been complicated," she finally said, still facing away. "On one hand, there's this deep anger that sometimes makes it hard to breathe. Anger at them, at fate, even at you for not being strong enough to remember." She turned, her eyes shining with tears she refused to shed. "On the other hand, I see how Lily lights up around you, how she finally has a dad. And there's a part of me that feels hope for her. Not for us." "I never expected there'd be an us again, Rachel," Ethan responded softly. "I know what we had was irrevocably broken. You built an entire life without me. A good life, one where I don't have a place, except as Lily's father. And that's enough for you, just being her dad." The question carried hidden meanings, silent tests. "It has to be." Ethan met her gaze. "It's more than I deserve, after everything." From Lily's room, the sound of the girls' laughter drifted into the living area, reminding them of the real reason they had to find a path through this emotional minefield. "It won't be easy," Rachel said, returning to her seat. "The girls know they're sisters now, but there's so much more we'll have to explain as they grow. Difficult questions, I know. And I want you to know I'll respect your boundaries, your rules. I'll be there for Lily in whatever way you think is best." Rachel nodded slowly. "I just need you to understand one thing, Ethan. There are no shortcuts here. There's no quick fix for losing 9 years. Building trust, a real relationship, whether between a father and daughter or anything else, takes time. Time is all I have to give." A silence fell, not entirely comfortable, but not as tense as before. It was as if a small opening had appeared in a seemingly impenetrable wall. As the girls' laughter continued to echo through the apartment, Ethan and Rachel remained seated, each lost in their own thoughts, their own pain and hopes, separated by the years they couldn't share, yet united by the love for the two children who, in their innocence, had already found a way across the chasm the adults were still struggling to bridge. Ethan sat in his car for a few minutes, parked in front of the grand mansion where he'd grown up. The stone house with neoclassical columns, immaculate gardens, and a circular driveway had always seemed like a symbol of solidity and tradition. Now he saw only a facade, beautiful and impressive, but hiding rotten foundations. In the weeks since discovering Lily and the scale of the deception, he had avoided this confrontation. Part of him still wanted to believe there was some explanation, some justification that might lessen the betrayal. But after hearing Rachel's account, after seeing in her eyes the years of solitary struggle and loss, he knew he had to face the truth, however painful. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The butler answered the door with his usual reserved expression. "Mr. Ethan, your parents are in the study." "Thank you, James." He walked through hallways lined with family portraits, some dating back generations. With bitterness, he noticed there were no photos of Leah, his own daughter, the only grandchild of the Lancasters, absent from the visual narrative of the family, as if she too were not important enough. The study door was slightly ajar. His father, George Lancaster, sat behind an imposing mahogany desk reviewing documents. His mother, Eleanor, arranged flowers in a vase by the window, a scene of domestic normalcy that now struck Ethan as absurdly fake. "Ethan, dear," his mother greeted, smiling when she saw him. "What a pleasant surprise. Is everything all right?" "No, it's not," he answered, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made Eleanor's smile falter. George looked up from his papers, scrutinizing his son with a piercing gaze. "Sit down," he said, indicating one of the leather chairs in front of the desk. "I'd rather stand." Tense silence filled the room. Eleanor moved closer to her husband, as if seeking protection. "I found Rachel," Ethan finally said, watching his parents' reactions closely. A brief look passed between them, quick, almost imperceptible, but loaded with meaning. "Rachel?" his mother asked, trying to sound confused. "I don't recall anyone by that name." The blatant lie ignited something inside Ethan, a cold, controlled anger, more dangerous than any outburst. "Don't insult my intelligence, Mother. Rachel Peterson. The woman I loved. The woman who was pregnant when I had the accident. The woman you told I was dead." George cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. There was no point denying it now. "Ethan, everything we did was for your own good. You were confused, injured. You needed a new start." "A new start?" Ethan echoed, incredulous. "You stole my life. My chance to know my own daughter." "That girl wasn't right for you," Eleanor snapped, her voice cold. "She didn't belong in our world. It would have been a disaster. It wasn't your decision to make. We're your parents," George interjected, his voice rising. "Responsible for your well-being. You'd just come out of a coma, for God's sake. Didn't even know who you were. And you took advantage of that to shape me into the son you always wanted." Ethan shook his head in disgust. "Marrying Vanessa, taking my place in the company, all carefully orchestrated so I'd fit the mold you chose." His parents remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. "What I can't fathom," Ethan continued, voice now dangerously calm, "is how you could be so cruel as to make Rachel believe I was dead. She was pregnant. Your grandchild." A cold glint flickered in George's eyes. "We tried to handle it civilly," he finally said. "Offered her money to leave and raise the child away from here. She refused. That justifies the lie. Telling her I'd died. It was a necessary adjustment of the truth," George replied without a trace of remorse. "When you were unconscious, and we weren't sure you'd survive, we made a decision. By the time you recovered, it was too late to go back." "Too late," Ethan repeated, the words bitter in his mouth. "You made her bury me. She laid flowers on an empty coffin." "It was better that way," Eleanor remarked. "A clean break. No complications." "Complications?" The word stung like a slap. "My daughter was a complication to you." For the first time, Ethan saw something like discomfort cross his mother's face, but it was momentary, soon replaced by her usual mask of composure. "So you know I have another daughter?" Ethan asked his father directly. "Of course," George replied with blunt honesty, surprising Ethan. "What? We've always known," George said. "Did you think we wouldn't keep an eye on the situation? Ensure she was okay?" The implication hit Ethan like a punch. His parents not only knew about Lily, but had essentially tracked her life from a distance, like spectators of a show they directed. "You watched her all this time." "Monitored, occasionally," George corrected, as though semantics made a difference. "We made sure she never lacked anything essential. Even offered financial help, which Rachel persistently refused." "Out of foolish pride," Eleanor added. "Out of dignity," Ethan corrected, his admiration for Rachel only growing. "For not wanting anything from the people who saw her as an inconvenience to be removed." George sighed, as if tired of the conversation. "Look at your life now, Ethan. The position you've attained, the respect you command. You're better off without them. We never anticipated you'd cross paths again." Those words, uttered so casually, so confidently, crystallized Ethan's last shred of doubt. Any hope that there might be some redemption for his parents vanished. "Better," he repeated softly. "Better with a failed marriage to a woman I don't love. Better not knowing my own daughter through crucial years of her life. Better living a lie." "Ethan, you're overreacting." "No, Mother. I'm finally seeing clearly." He glanced around the study, at the symbols of power and tradition that once meant so much. "I was shocked to discover what you did. But you know what truly frightens me? That you still believe you were right." "We did what was necessary," George insisted. "Then I'll do what's necessary too." Ethan stood straighter, a strange calm settling over him. "I'm going to officially recognize Lily as my daughter. I'll assume all parental rights and responsibilities. And you won't be part of her life or Leah's." Eleanor paled. "You can't keep us away from our granddaughters. I can, and I will. You've already proven you don't deserve to be near them. George stood, a vein throbbing in his temple. Think carefully about this, son. Everything you have, your position, your future in the company, I don't want any of it. Not anymore. Keep the company, the money, all of it. You're throwing your life away for some youthful fling and a girl you barely know, Eleanor said, tears welling in her eyes. No, mother, I'm finally choosing my own life, and I choose my daughter's. Ethan turned to leave, pausing with his hand on the doorknob. You once asked me why I always felt incomplete, even though I had everything. Now I know the answer. You stole the most important part of me. He walked out without looking back, not seeing the shock on his parents' faces or hearing his mother's increasingly desperate pleas. In his chest, where there had been confusion and guilt, there was now unexpected clarity, like a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Once in his car, he cast one final glance at the towering mansion he would never visit again. There was no sadness, only acceptance, and for the first time in many years, maybe since the accident, he felt genuinely free. The documents were spread out on the lawyer's desk, official records, statements, DNA tests, petitions. Ethan stared at the fresh signature on the last page, feeling both sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the lost years that could never be recovered, relief that he was finally doing the right thing. This officially starts the paternity recognition process, explained the lawyer, a middle-aged woman with a kind but professional demeanor. Since the test confirms the biological link and the mother consents, it should go smoothly. How long will it take? Ethan asked, still gazing at the documents as though they could magically fill the 9-year void. A few months at most, but you can already exercise your rights and responsibilities as a father. The legal document just formalizes what's already happening in practice. In the 2 months since his break with his parents, Ethan had made decisions that would have seemed unthinkable to the man he once was. He left the family company, liquidated his personal investments, and began building a life completely independent of the Lancaster empire. Most surprising was how little he missed the luxury, the status, the connections. It was as though that life had never really been his, just a role he'd been forced to play. Now he had a new purpose, to be the father Leah and Lily deserved, and to repay, in some measure, the years Rachel had struggled alone. Ethan drove to the place he'd visited 3 times in the last few weeks. The house stood on a leafy street with wide, calm sidewalks. It wasn't ostentatious like the Lancaster mansion, but had a warm charm and understated elegance that reminded him of Rachel. 2 stories, a spacious yard, a swing hanging from a backyard tree, and a small front porch where one could easily imagine sipping coffee on a Sunday morning. Mr. Lancaster, I got your message. So have you made a decision? Asked the realtor waiting at the entrance. Yes, he replied simply, looking once more at the house that felt like something out of a dream. I'll take it. The next day, he picked Leah up from school earlier than usual. Where are we going, Dad? She asked, noticing they weren't following the usual route home. We have a special mission today, Ethan said with a conspiratorial grin. First, we're going to pick up Lily. Leah's eyes lit up at the mention of her sister. Since finding out they were related, the girls had become inseparable, forging a bond stronger than an ordinary friendship, as if they were making up for the lost years. When they arrived at Lily's school, the girl was already waiting by the gate, her teacher having told her she'd be picked up early. Surprise! Leah squealed as soon as Lily got in the car, making her sister laugh. What are we doing? Lily asked, buckling her seatbelt. A secret adventure, Ethan replied, exchanging a playful look with Leah in the rearview mirror. Do you two trust me? Yes, they answered in unison, making Ethan smile. He took them to a nearby shopping center. They walked into a children's clothing store, where Ethan announced each could pick out 3 complete outfits. Any outfits we want? Lily asked, wide-eyed. Anything you like, Ethan confirmed. The girls exchanged excited glances before diving into the racks. Leah, used to frequent gifts, was still enthusiastic, but Ethan noticed how Lily seemed especially awed, discreetly checking price tags and hesitating over the more expensive items. Don't worry about the prices, he said gently, crouching to her level. Today, choose what you really like. Lily nodded, a shy smile spreading across her face as she finally allowed herself to choose the lilac dress she had been eyeing since they arrived. After the clothes, they went to a bookstore, where each girl was allowed to pick 3 books. Then to a toy store, where, to the girls' delight, Ethan declared they could each pick something special. While Leah went straight for the doll section, Lily stood transfixed, gazing around as though she'd never seen so many toys in one place. "I can really pick anything?" she asked again, as if she couldn't believe it. "Anything your heart desires," Ethan promised, feeling a pang as he realized Rachel probably hadn't been able to give Lily this kind of treat. After much deliberation, Lily chose a children's telescope, something Ethan discovered she'd dreamed of owning ever since she became interested in the stars. Leah picked out a doll with bright orange hair and a small microscope, inspired by her sister's interest in science. The final stop on their adventure was an ice cream shop. Sitting at a colorful table, shopping bags piled beside them, they devoured enormous sundaes while chatting and laughing. "This is the best day of my life," Lily declared between spoonfuls of strawberry ice cream. Ethan smiled, mentally capturing every detail, the brightness in their eyes, the ice cream smudged on their faces, the sound of their unfiltered laughter. No amount of money could buy that happiness. "We have one more stop before I take you home," he announced once they were finished. "More surprises?" Leah asked, practically bouncing in her seat. "The biggest one yet," Ethan said, a mysterious smile on his lips. 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of the house Ethan had bought the previous day. The girls gazed at it curiously from the car. "What a beautiful house," Lily commented. "It's so big," Leah observed. "Who does it belong to?" Ethan took a deep breath before replying. "It belongs to you and your mum," he said, looking at Lily. The girl blinked several times, trying to process this. "Our house. But we already have an apartment." "I know. But this house has more room, a yard for you two to play in, bigger bedrooms." He paused, searching for the right words. "I thought it would be a great place for you two to grow up together. Leah can visit on weekends, or you can go to her place." "Does Mum know about this?" Lily asked, ever perceptive. "Not yet. I wanted you to see it first. We'll tell her together." The girls hopped out of the car, eager to explore their new home. Ethan followed with the keys, unlocking the door. Inside, it was as warm and inviting as the outside suggested. Ethan had hired a decorator to set up the essentials: furniture, curtains, a few paintings. He wanted Rachel and Lily to be able to move in right away if they wanted. The girls ran from room to room, exclaiming at every feature, their voices echoing in the empty space. When they reached the upstairs bedrooms, Lily stopped in front of what was clearly meant to be hers, awestruck. The walls were painted a soft sky blue. On the ceiling were glow-in-the-dark stickers of stars and planets arranged in constellations. A desk stood by the window, shelves ready for books, and a bed with a solar system comforter. It's exactly like I always dreamed," she whispered, stepping inside cautiously, as if afraid it might vanish. Ethan smiled, pleased that he'd gotten it right. Over the past weeks, he'd paid close attention whenever Lily mentioned her fascination with outer space. "You really like it?" he asked, though the answer was obvious on her amazed face. Instead of answering, Lily ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Dad," she murmured against his chest. It was the first time she'd called him that so openly, without hesitation or awkwardness. Ethan felt a lump in his throat, hugging her back as Leah joined them, turning it into a group hug. Later that day, after Ethan called Rachel and asked her to meet them at an address he would text her, they waited in the living room. The girls had decided among themselves how they would share the news. When Rachel's car pulled up outside, the girls ran to the door, eager to greet her. "Mom, Mom! We have a huge surprise," Lily shouted as Rachel stepped out of the car, looking confused and slightly concerned. "What is this place? What are you doing here?" she asked, glancing from the house to Ethan, who hung back a few steps behind the girls. "It's our new house," Lily announced, tugging her mother's hand. "Come see, it's perfect." Rachel cast a questioning look at Ethan, who only gave a small shrug and gestured for her to follow the girls. The tour of the house was an explosion of childlike enthusiasm, with Lily and Leah showing each room as though they'd personally decorated the entire place. Rachel followed in silence, her face a mixture of emotions he couldn't decipher. Finally, they reached the kitchen. The girls asked if they could go play in the backyard, leaving the adults alone for the first time since Rachel arrived. "Ethan, what is all this?" she asked, her voice low and controlled. "A house for you and Lily," he replied simply. "Something you both deserve. We can't accept this. It's too much. It's not a gift, Rachel. It's an obligation. 9 years of financial responsibility I never fulfilled." Rachel shook her head, looking out the window at the girls now running around the yard, laughing. "It's not about the money." "I know." Ethan took a step closer but maintained a respectful distance. "Listen, I'm not trying to buy forgiveness or a place in your lives with this. The house is in Lily's name, with you as her guardian until she's 18. I'm not asking for anything in return." Rachel studied his face for a long moment, searching for any hidden agenda. "Why?" she finally asked. "Because it's what I would have done if I'd been around from the start. Because I want Lily to have everything I couldn't give her all these years. Because I want both girls to grow up together, like sisters in a place big enough for that." Rachel turned back to the window, where Leah and Lily were taking turns pushing each other on a swing hanging from a sturdy tree branch. "They look so happy," she murmured. "They deserve to be," Ethan said softly. "I don't know if I can accept something like this," Rachel finally admitted. "It's a lot. Think of it as an investment in Lily's future, in both their futures." Ethan hesitated before adding, "I'm not asking to move back into your life, Rachel. I know that ship sailed a long time ago. I just want to do what's right." Rachel nodded slowly, still watching the girls through the window. A single tear slid down her cheek, which she quickly brushed away. "They really do look like real sisters, don't they? Like they've always known each other." "Blood runs deep," Ethan said with a small smile. "They have a special bond." Rachel finally turned to him, her eyes still shining with tears, but also with something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not for the house, but for loving our daughter, for really wanting to be part of her life. It's the least I can do." They walked outside to the yard, keeping a respectful distance from each other, but united by their love for the two girls now running in circles on the grass, hugging and laughing, as if their world held only joy and endless possibilities. Ethan watched Rachel move toward the girls, the late afternoon sun illuminating her hair, a genuine smile on her face. He had lost so much time he could never recover, but seeing this scene, his daughters playing in the yard of a house that could have been their family home in another life, Rachel watching them with love, he felt that maybe some things could be repaired. Not in the way he once imagined, not with a fairy tale ending where lost time miraculously disappears, but with respect, commitment, and small daily steps toward a new reality in which love, though wounded, still insisted on finding its way. A reality built not on illusions, but on a shared determination to be there for two little girls who, unknowingly, had already shown the grown-ups how healing can begin, simply by laughing together under the same sky. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.